So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit just for a second, just to show you two other things. So the other thing I wanted to show you was Splice Geo, which is another thing which is normally only found in your really, really expensive super duper compositing packages. We can see here that our gherkin is on a card, but I've actually displaced the geometry based on a Bezier. I could have used the alpha, but I used the Bezier because I can sort of make the fall off. And the reason is if I wanted to just tweak the position of the gherkin, right, just say I wanted to, I don't know, rotate it or something. So I've got my card and I want to rotate it. Something you may not know and something you may thank me for showing you, if you press Command-Alt-Shift or Control-Alt-Shift, you can, in the viewport, change the pivot point. Right? I get asked that 10 times a day. How do you do that? Right? So it actually can be done interactively. For years and years and years, Frank showed me that. For years and years and years, I used to do it here in the parameters, but you can actually do it interactively in the viewport. And the benefit is if I want to rotate this now, I can hold down my Command key and I can rotate my gherkin based on, there you go.
Rotate your gherkin.
I know it's been John's Python.
I know.
It's been users' knobs, and now we're talking about my gherkin. I can see a theme.
Blushing here.
I know, it's been a dirty, dirty demo, hasn't it? Anyway, so I'm rotating, and you can actually you can use Shift to lock axis here. So if I held down Shift, you can lock axis. You can rotate the gherkin. So because it's got depth, and it's a semi-3D asset now, it's like a 2.5D asset, you've got more flexibility to art direct and nudge things around. In the same way, I'll just turn that off quickly and bring this building back in. Actually, this is the one I want to bring back in. I'll just turn this one off too. This is pretty severely distorted. It looks fine in this plate here. It looks great in that plate here because it's not there. No, it looks fine in the plate here. But once we put it into the scene, we actually see that this building's suffering for some pretty severe lens distortion. Right? It's sort of warping out, it's bowing out. If you try and draw a roto shape around it, that's when you really see that there's a bit of badness going on, right? So this is the guy I'm working on here. I should have named them. It's my own laziness. Never mind why that's that, because I transformed it. See, I'm an idiot. But basically there's some lens distortion going on. So you can see that this is what it looks like distorted, right? But I've actually used the extended bicubic again to fix that lens distortion, right? So I've just gone in and gone, well, I need to sort of warp this building back to where it should be. But this is the thing that's better than Flame. So if you're wondering what I was crapping on about, this is what's really awesome. If I'm working with this card and I want to use an extended bicubic, in Flame you can only subdivide globally. That's right, isn't it? You can't do like localized subdivisions on bicubics. You can't say I want. You can?
Yeah.
I'll shut up then. Well, when I used it, you couldn't. All right, because you got this cool little guy here. Oh, dude, I was like before it was multi-res. Anyway, sorry, off topic. So you've got this little guy here, and what this little guy here in the 3D viewport indicates is where on the card. And you can see if I full screen this and sort of bring it around, you can see that I've got a card here, and it's extended bicubic, and it's not going to go off the surface. It's just sort of constrained to the surface. If I nominate a point, say over here, and you go X subdivide. Sorry, you subdivide. I didn't do that. Never happened. Undo. You can use subdivide based on the position of that locator, right? So you can do localized subdivision, and it's not going to like increase the resolution across the entire mesh or across the entire bicubic. So you can position it where you need to do the correction. So now I can get this guy out of the way, and I can adjust the distortion or adjust for distortion on this point based on like a localized subdivision, which is really quite nice. And I can do all that cool stuff where I can select multiples and move them together. And I can even do it, if I was going to be clever, in my 2D viewport, right? Because it's going to pass the transform controls along. See? So it's like, in a lot of ways, a grid warp, but it's very fast. And it also allows you to have, and this is not particularly the best example for it, but it's three-dimensional, right? So you can actually pull it out. Right, and that's really, really useful. I mean, you can think of the number of times where you just need to nudge an element, it's like a pyro element or something like that, and get it closer to where it is, and it's sort of tracking, but it just needs a little bit of a warpy. And that's something that, although I was unfortunate I can't show it to you today, I was going to show you some stuff I did on Australia like this, but our good friends at Fox said that I couldn't show anyone that, so Sadly not. So thanks for that. So yeah, that's the localized subdivision, and that's really cool, and that's pretty much all I wanted to show that example. I'll show you the final shot, but it's not that impressive. All right, I'll show it to you anyway. Because there's one other cool thing in this shot that I was going to skip, but I'll show it to you now. So this is, it's a bit cheese because the glow's not right and the exposure differential between the foreground and the background's not right. But what I wanted to show you was this reflection here in the screen, right? So rather than just doing a normal sort of 2D corner pin just to cheat the reflection back in, I thought, well, I've built this 3D scene and, I'm wasting time anyway. Why don't I just take everything that I've done with the camera move, the transforms, make a new scene node, right? And then just spit that out as a separate render without the foreground plate, right? So there it is, there's my scene, there's the 3D move on it, right? It's occurring and being rendered out of my scanline render in exactly the same way as the background will, right? And then I can corner pin that into my 2D scene, just using a corner pin, so that if I change my background, if I change my camera move or anything changes, the reflection will be exactly accurate. Well, not exactly accurate, but it'll update and we get it for free. So even though you're not going to see like the parallax or anything like that, in circumstances where you might have a window or something where it actually will read, just reusing the 3D, and all I'm doing literally is just connecting up to another scene node, rendering it out, so you can reuse the reflection and then comp it into the scene. In this case, I've used a Bezier and I've set it to replace, and I've used it as an inside, right? So rather than, I've done an inside with a single node, and I've just gone inside this area here, drawn my Bezier, hit replace, and it's performing the inside function, right? And then I've pre-multed it and just screened it back over the top with a really low value, right? So that's another thing, if you haven't already been aware of this, is all your node operations, all your merge operations are here, including a bunch that I don't even understand what they do. Like, I know what Hypot does.
Check the tooltip.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm confused. Yeah, so there are some there that are specifically there because of they fix problems encountered in floating point space, like Hypot, which is there to help with. Is that right?
A hypot is a distance calculation, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, what he said.
Probably best used with vector channels. I'm not sure if you want to use it on maths. It might be quite unintuitive if you're not aware of your.
Yeah, but it's there to solve a problem, basically.
Whatever works.
Yeah, that's the one. So what the crux of what I'm trying to say is you can be incredibly technical and you can be very precise about things, but you can also still use Nuke as a very intuitive compositor. I think a lot of people look at it and see it as a very technical application and think of it as very heavily number crunching and things like that. But what I'm showing you here is all what I consider to be very traditional compositing type stuff, still very sort of fast and loose and artistic. So there's no need to be constrained in your approach to things just by nature of the beast, right? This is still a very intuitive compositing package. It's just a small jump into the interface and you're away. All right, so there's the result. I'm just going to frame cycle that. And if anyone says anything about my edges, I'll cry, okay? I'll just say it's the projector. Actually, no, it's softening it up nicely. It's like broadcast, you do something at 1080i and then they put it out at like 200 lines. I know, down the bottom. Anyone see that? Yeah. It's just like dailies, man. It's just like being back in dailies. And there's this junk here. And that's how I roll. Anyway, cool, so there you go. So that's that shot. It obviously needs a lot more work. I've put a bit of a glow on it. I've used the same technique as Matt showed earlier, where I've just chucked a Bezier on and put that out to a separate channel, just called it glow outside, and then just use that as the input for my glow. So rather than actually using the side mask input, I'm just passing the channel down, right? But you can always pipe things into the side input of things if you really need to. That was a nice concession for the transitioning users when Nuke 5 came out. I don't often do it. The other thing I want to mention is inject. Inject is when you put things into the script. You don't actually have to use it at that particular node, although you can, but it injects it into the data stream in the same way as copying in. So it's just like doing a channel copy into the thing. So if you want to punch a mat in or a Bezier roto shape that you're going to use later down the tree, if you tick inject, it won't just mask the node out. It'll actually bring it back into the data stream and pass it along to the next nodes. Okay, so that's also a useful thing. There's all these ticks and buttons here, and sometimes people don't take the time to figure out what they all do. Okay, so that's enough of that. Let's get on to the big shot, I reckon. All right, let me close a few things down and we'll do the big ones. So this is going to be the Frank and Tahl show. I'm going to start you off and show you a couple of things, and then Frank's going to take it from there. I still love doing that. All right, so bear with me. We seem to be having some technical difficulties. There we go. Coming. There I am, Frank. All right. There we go. Don't restore the new one. Bam. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is the shot that we're working with, and I might just quickly frame cycle this up. This is a shot that, again, red camera, which was shot, drop this down, be faster. For some reason today, I think it might be the screen capture software, Frame Cycle has been really unhappy on this Mac, and it's not going as fast as it would normally do. It's not too bad, it's caching. And these are just single discs, they're not like, there's nothing rated or anything cool like that. So here's a shot, and it's just painfully handheld. And we had a nightmare of a time tracking this. Thank you for the guys at Cineside who helped us out. And also for everyone who did the 3D geometry fit and all that stuff. I'll just quickly grab this shot and... is that even no cache? No, fail. All right, so it's just what I wanted to show you was it's all over the place. It's in that part of London next to the Gherkin, where all the banks are and those cool buildings and stuff. And there's a lot of things we want to do to this shot. We want to do a sky replace. We want to take these awful cranes out of the shot. In doing the sky replace, we want to actually fix the reflections of the sky into this glass. And also, Frank's going to show you a really cool technique for doing stabilise on this shot while keeping all the motion, and also how to add in 2D elements, but I'll let him get to that in a moment. So let's get cracking on that. So here's the lineup, and here's the geometry and everything that's come from 3D. It's all right, good. No, please. Am I boring you? Okay. And here's the lineup, and here's the camera, and we can see that we've got a track here. We've got some basic geometry describing aspects of the scene. So you get this from your 3D guy, and they go, the track's it's just nailed. It's awesome. And what you're going to do now, obviously, is just get working in Nuke and make it all work. So the first thing I wanted to show you was how to check the lineup so that you can make your match movers' lives hell in Nuke. And as Frank always tells me, not all buffers are created equal, right? So this is a really cool trick using buffer 1 in order to see an OpenGL view overlaid over your footage to check the lineup of the geometry of things. So I've loaded that into buffer 1, and then I'm going to go in, and in my viewer I'm going to connect, I should select it first, I'm going to connect this to the B side of my viewer. So it's just viewer, connect to B side, and the shortcut for that is Shift 2. Right, and you can also manually do it up here by choosing what you want to do. By default that wipes using the wipe, right, to do a compare. But if I drop this down and go over, what it'll actually do is it'll lay the OpenGL screen grab over my footage, right? And in doing so, if I go back to render cam, turn lock on, and cache this up, right? I mean, you'll have to. It looks like it's slipping, but it's the update. Trust me. Let this cache up. Should I? I'll let it cache up. It's a chance to catch my breath and have a drink of water. And there. So let it cache up. And what will happen once it caches, and it's actually good to watch this cached up, so we'll let it cache, is you'll be able to see the geometry line up against the footage and judge for yourself whether this is working or not. And because we're using this lock, sorry, I shouldn't point to the screen, I should do this. Because we're using this lock to camera button, you can zoom in and out and actually see the extents and see how the lineup's going. It should be in another couple of seconds. I promise it will eventually cache. Come on. Almost. Hey, is this a good time for a feature request? You know what'd be nice is, in After Effects you have that that caching feedback. It is?
Yeah, it's the machine and the screen.
I think it's the screen capture software. Regardless, the point is, it will say, okay, I've just, again, told a lot of nonsense. You can zoom out, and because it's locked in, and you can see the lineup. I guarantee on your machines it'll work better. You can see the lineup of these two things on top of each other. So that's really hard to visualize any other way. But just by loading it into buffer 1, you've got to make sure the geometry is into buffer 1, right? And then you can load in the read node into buffer 2 with an over. And you can even do this, which is kind of cool. You can, Okay, so for those of you who have a long memory, all the way in the beginning of the day, Jon built us an awesome pan and tile setup in Python. And seeing it was such a good thing, we didn't want to waste it. I'm actually going to show you how to use it. So if I go into my awesome menu here, and I choose, oh no, I'll read the footage in first. This is the retouched one, which is had the Frank heel brush treatment. So you showed you the heel brush, and this is the result of that. And these are the 8 EXR tiles, and as you saw from Jon before, they're, let's turn that off, frame that out, come here, there we go. We go up to frame 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's our tiles. So if I go into there and I hit pan and tile, through the magic of cinema, I'm just going to grab all this and move it off to the side. Oh, I've done a bad thing. Done a bad thing. I could even, L key, it works. I know, it's just like coming home. Move this off to the side, and then there's that, and then there's that. Okay, cool. So here is my laid out one. I've actually got the wrong version of the Gizmo on my system because it should have laid that out for me, so that's my fault. But because you can see that the new one has panorama and whatchamacallit on it, and this one's got turn. But never mind. Right, if we zoom all the way in, here's our little sky dome teepee, as I've come to call them. And they're all sort of arranged in teepee arrangement. This is actually shot portrait, not landscape. So there's a little parameter for doing that. And there is our sky dome positioned in a lovely fashion, right? So that's the first thing we need to get settled. Now I'm going to grab this camera and I'm going to clone it. And like I said before, I need to check that I'm not reading for file before I clone it, because it's an FBX, and if you read for file, that is one of the gotchas, right? So if you're cloning a camera that's reading FBX from file, not so good. So I'm going to clone it, edit, clone, and it's Command K. I think it's Command K. And then I've got my expression links here, right? So I can see that this is like a clone link between them. And I'll just make a scanline render node. As promised, I'm using the tab thing, and connect them up, right? And if I hit Alt and E, I can hide those expression links. So there's going to be a few clones and expressions in this script, and it's going to get a bit messy. So if you have them all there, it's going to look bad. I'll just hide them out. It's a bit easier, right? And the other thing I might do is I might just chuck a transform geo in there. I could do this within the scene node itself. This is our panorama scene node. I can rotate and do all this stuff here, but I'm just going to do it with the transform geo because it's a little bit easier. I want that, not that. Cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split my viewer into 2 and make a new viewer. And I'm going to connect that up to what I'm looking at over here. And I might look at the output of my scanline render node, right? And what I'm going to do is just scale up this sky dome huge. There we go. So if I go to the end of my scene, I might just give myself a bit more screen real estate. We're seeing some problems here, and this is like clipping caused by sampling in the render. Because I've got such big distances, and because I've only got a finite number of samples, there's a little bit of sampling going on. So if I adjust the near and far clip plane on my camera, just by double clicking on my camera, going to the projection tab, and just bump this up. If I do this with the output of the scanline renderer visible, I can actually see it happen interactively. So I'm just bumping up the near clipping plane on my camera. And as I bump this up, like magic, it goes away. So you can probably get away with less than 9. You can probably do 6 or something. And there's aliasing, but that's not the same thing because these are just cards slotting into each other. Because you see, we have a 3D system where you can actually have intersecting cards. Ooh, burn. And then I just can't let it drop. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to fix the scene so that as we get to the end of our shot, which is this guy here, I want to have like a hot spot or a sun in the sky, right? So I'm going to rotate out my sky dome in such a way. I've reconnected my viewers the wrong way around here. I should do that. Come on, be my friend. There we go. All right, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that. There we go. I just like doing it that way more. I'll just use the default camera here. I'm just going to rotate out my sky dome so that it's going to position the hotspot, which I happen to know is up here on this tile in front of my camera. So just nominally, I'll just rotate this by, I don't know, 180 degrees. Right. I go to my end frame and it's about right. Oh, I'll give it a bit more, shall I? Yeah, looks about right. Oh, no, a bit less. So what I'm doing is I'm going between columns here and using my arrow keys up and down, and I can adjust in single value increments or multiples of 10 or multiples of whatever. So it's just one of the, you know, I know you can do this by holding Alt and dragging as well, but it's just a nice interactive way of doing stuff, right? So I'm just going to grab the tile over here and adjust it because it's causing me a bit of grief, and you'll see in a moment what I'm doing. So once again, interactively selecting something. And this is the tile I'm working with here. It's card number 4. Good, I've got the right one. And it's got a rotation assigned to it. Is this right? Is that right?
That's all right.
All right, goody.
Still linked to the scene note.
Yeah, that's all good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break the animation out of that, say no animation, and I'm going to delete that. And now I can manually go in there and just shift these cards. The thing I'm looking for is I'm trying to adjust it so this sky bit here is free of this cloud bit here, right? Because when they overlap, the cool trick I'm going to do in a moment is not going to work. So I'm just shifting these, and you can see in the right-hand view it's rotating around the central axis because it's still in the origin. And there we go, it's probably a bit, yeah, it's all right. Right, so that's kind of got me where I need to be, right? And you're saying, that's really cool, they line up and it's not cutting off, but the edge is really like bad here, right? And it's really crap. So what are we going to do about that? Well, I answer, we have a really cool feature in Nuke called the Z blend mode. And what the Z blend mode does is it blends things in Z rather than having them directly intersect. So if I turn on the Z blend mode, the thing to remember here is that it is referring to the same scene scale units as my 3D view. Now I've scaled my camera up, my sky dome up by 10,000. So a Z blend range of 0.1 is not enough to function with what I'm going to do. So if I kick this up to something more reasonable like 250, you can see that it's going to blend between these two plates and whiz bang, the seam's gone. So now my sky dome is got a nice smooth transition on it, right? So all that remains before I can hand over to Frank, who's going to weigh you with some amazing stuff, is to connect the mat of this, pre-mult it, and then lay this over. Wrong way around. But there's a hotkey for that. Shift X. Right, so now I have a sky replace. Right, I know it was a little bit easy, that key, so why don't I break open the key and just show you what I did. And you can go File, Node, Open Group in Node Graph, that's just a group, right? Or you can go Command Enter, which is the hotkey. But just open up that thing, and here's the key that I used. I used exactly the same gag I used on the last one, where I'm using a grade node and pulling the key. But what I've done is, while this was all going on and we were building stuff, I went out to another application to do my roto. See, we generally don't have the same people doing rotoscoping on the same application as compositors, because there's all these great roto applications like Mocha and Silhouette and stuff out there. And for instance, where I was working previously, we used Mocha because it's got a great plane and tracker, it's really good, but it only works with SSFs, right, which is like the shake spline format. So I know some of you guys have like in-house tools for doing roto, for example. So what we do is I sort of, while all this other stuff was being set up, I didn't have a a Nuke license handy, so I just went out to Mocha and rotoed this, and I wanted to get my SSFs in. So there's a free TCL script out there called import SSF, right? And you can just go import SSF, and then I can go into my roto folder and go, well, I want to get this holdout for my scene, right? And this is coming directly from Mocha. I've just exported this as an SSF format. And one thing, it's got 257 frames, right? It's taken all the animation in with me. Those of you who've ever done import SSFs into Shake will know that it's like 257 frames. It's like a 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute process, whereas it's not even the native format in Nuke, and it's instant. So something's wrong there. Anyway, so now we have a pretty decent mat and a holdout for our scene, and we have our sky replaced with obviously some problems, but I think it's time to throw to Frank, who's going to take this baby home.